It's a Friday Ask LOJ edition to wrap up the week. Will Lauri Markkanen make it to the Jazz by the trade deadline? Yes! Will Brandon Ingram be a member of the Utah Jazz? Stay tuned to find out. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. On today's edition of Locked on Jazz, you have come up clutch, maybe the best yet. What are the odds Lauri is on the team by the trade deadline? Any thoughts on a Lauri sign and trade? What's going on with Jordan Clarkson? And can they move him? Is there a surprise team that jumps into the Lauri sweepstakes? We move then to free agency. Brandon Ingram, is that a possibility? What other free agents are still out there that aren't being mentioned? From there, we move to Keyonte George, Isaiah Collier. Can they play together? Which one of these kids is going to be an all-star in a stunningly short period of time? So we'll discuss the answer a little differently than it's being mentioned there. All sorts of great questions as we continue then. Little Cody Williams comp to a former Jazz player. Some loud questions about tanking as well, even a Jazz Plus. And then someone corrects me on my feeling about Isaiah Collier and some things. So it is a full-packed, awesome show. As I mentioned, I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's a daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. We are free and available on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe and follow. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell button so you get notified whenever the show comes out. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen, and thank you to the everydayers that make us cook. What are the odds that Lauri Markkanen is on the Utah Jazz at the trade deadline? So this is super interesting because if you're following the story, what's interesting here is the Jazz cannot extend Lauri until 2 years past his signing with Cleveland from Chicago. And that date, I think, is like August 8th. And what's interesting is the NBA trade deadline this year is February 9th. And you cannot trade someone 6 months after extending them, until 6 months after you extend them, which means and there's some talk that Lauri's agents will do this, if Lauri's agents wait an extra 2 days and don't sign until the 10th on an extension that is agreed with the Jazz, he's not trade eligible by the deadline and is with the Jazz guaranteed for the entire season. It's kind of their way of getting a no trade clause in the first year of the deal. Do the Jazz have a problem with that because it restricts their ability to movement and play a roster build and things like that? I don't know. That could be a real sticking point in negotiations if from a Jazz standpoint, if they aren't willing to get it done right away. There are reports that like Lauri's people are like, I don't know why they need to be in town. That seems really silly. That was like one of the reports that they're in town. Really, modern world, I don't think they need to be in town unless they all wanted to get together for some reason. So it does feel as though, we're heading in that direction, or at least that's being discussed. But the timing of it gets really, really interesting in the fact that it has these funny little mechanisms that are taking place. And it means that so that's kind of I laid it out there. That's the dates and the times and how this all plays out. So we'll see what happens. August 6th actually is the day he's eligible in August. And then I think February 7th is the trade deadline. Those are the exact dates. It's not the 9th. It's the 6th. So August 6th is the date where he's eligible. If he signs right away on the first day, then he could be traded on the very last day of the trading window. And if he waits, then he's not eligible to be traded again in that season. It's an interesting little twist. Any thoughts on potentially doing a sign and trade with Lauri? And if so, anyone you'd really love to trade for a new $40 million contract? So that sign and trade could not happen until 6 months past the time. So that's what we're talking about here. So I have not thought about that because it's too far down the road, and it might not be able to be happening until probably July of next year. Is there a surprise team that's going to jump in for Lauri? We've heard Sacramento, Golden State. Who's the dark horse team? So Sacramento seems to be off. At least they say they're off with DeMar DeRozan. I'm not sure that's enough. I do think there's some surprise teams. I don't know if they happen today, and they may not happen until next year, which is, another interesting possibility if you've signed him. Like Milwaukee to me would be a surprise team with nothing to offer. They don't have many picks left from the Drew Holiday trade, but they need to get better. We do have this like 7 to 9 teams that seem to be in the Cooper Flag world. They're probably not interested in Lauri, the Detroit, Washington, Charlotte, Toronto, Brooklyn aspect of things. Atlanta would certainly be interested if we'd take Trae Young, but I don't think that's of interest on our end. Oklahoma City would be the team where if something starts to go wrong in a year, I think maybe they start to they maybe make a push. And San Antonio would be a team where if they get good fast, they have a lot of assets, they might be willing to make a push. That would be those would be the 2 quick teams I have on that. The Clippers are just kind of in a weird spot. The Clippers and Lakers, and I don't know what they have to offer to be able to get that done either. So those are my quick thoughts on surprise teams there. What are the chances Jordan Clarkson is on the opening night roster? Starting to think we are going to see another trade deadline vet dump. Here's some information I just don't know. But if we walk back the last 4 or 5 trade windows, what I don't know is when and if Jordan was available. So I can go backwards here for a second. So is Jordan available right now? Yeah. Like everyone on our roster is available for the right piece, right? I don't think Jordan's not like somehow has reached some status where he's not available, right? I mean, if we're talking Lauri, we're talking Walker, he's available, hasn't been moved. At the trade deadline last year, we traded Kelly Olynyk, Simone Fontecchio, Ochai Agbaji. Had there been a deal for Jordan, would have we done it? It leads me to think yes. Okay. Last offseason was, I believe, Jordan's extension offseason. But I also would say, from a standpoint there on Jordan, had Jordan had a bunch of teams that had interest and offers in him, he might not have taken $14 million a year. Pretty low number. We back up to the previous trade deadline. That's the one where we traded Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, Mike Conley. I mean, maybe at that point, Jordan was so important to the culture and everything about the team that he wasn't tradable, but there's a chance he was, in which case then we didn't trade him again. And there were even rumors in Quins last year in the 22 trade deadline that we were trying to really make some moves and shake that team up and get there, and we just couldn't find anyone to take any of our players. So my thought on Jordan, now the contract's $14 million, and he's a really pretty good player. So it seemed, and he is coming off the worst year he's had in a long time. He's a pretty good player for $14 million. I do not feel as though there's a robust trade market for Jordan Clarkson right now. He changed his game and adapted beautifully as a 6th man, and then upped his assists fabulously in the last 2 years to 5 a game. And has shown this chameleon style of playing basketball that's very impressive. But I do think, and then last year, unfortunately, just had the worst shooting year of his career. I do think good teams have a hard time figuring out how he's going to work into their ecosystem. Like, so if you're pretty good and you already have high volume scores, I think teams have a hard time figuring out where he fits into that ecosystem. And thus has been difficult for the Jazz to find trade partners for him. I also think the market for trading for play like Jordan Clarkson, $14 million going out, is going to get more difficult because of all this new first apron, second apron stuff. All this first apron, second apron stuff to me means teams are more limited in what they can do, or they can't take more money back, or this or that, or these or those. I think the unintended consequences for teams like that aren't in the first and second eight and trying to trade with teams that are is going to be very, very difficult. So I think the chances are that Jordan Clarkson is on the opening night starting roster, because I'm not sure I think the landscape of the world is yielding for a move. Brandon Ingram agents have now got involved to try to find a landing space for Brandon Ingram. It's pretty good. He'd make us better. Are we interested? Next on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai. Murdoch Hyundai, located in Logan, Linden, and at 4646 South State Street. The Hyundai lineup of cars, it's just award-winning. Like, I don't know what else to tell you about Hyundai. You can decide what car you like, but let's just get the facts out there. The two electric cars, the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6, have won Car of the Year. The Elantra and Sonatas, which are their sedans, win Car of the Years. And the SUVs are amazing. I am driving the 2024 Palisade right now. You can get up to $3,000 off the car. It's just a great ride. Like, it's smooth. It's big. It has great space. It's got individual seats in the back, so you feel like you're in a luxury car. It's absolutely fabulous. The Tucson I had before is the smaller SUV, affordable, drives well, looks great. And now the new Santa Fe rocks as well. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, and in Logan and in Linden. If you're going to stop by, how about you email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll get you set up with the VIP treatment that you deserve from our friends at Murdoch Hyundai, because you are a Locked On every day. Hit me at dlock09@gmail.com. We'll set you up with that VIP meeting over at Murdoch Hyundai. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Millions of parts for your most valuable player, your ride. Patience, drive, passion. That's the winning formula, and it keeps your ride or die alive too. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicles, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You can always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time for your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only to U.S. customers. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. For your second listen, how about Locked On Sports Today? Quick 22-minute rundown of all the things going on in sports to give you everything you need to know as a sports fan. And if you want more in depth, the new Big 6 and 60, which I kind of love. It's a pretty cool show. All right, let's get back to your questions. You've been pretty great. The Big 6 and 60 is the 6 biggest shows in 60 minutes, the 6 biggest stories in 60 minutes every day. It's pretty great. I think the Jazz have to be discussing this. He's not a big game hunting. He's just good, though. Brandon Ingram is... Now, I do not think the Jazz, by the way, I want to make sure I'm clear on this so I understand the deals. I do not believe the Jazz could necessarily extend Brandon Ingram and Lauri Markkanen. And I would extend Lauri Markkanen before I would extend Brandon Ingram. But, like, on the simplest of terms, Brandon Ingram has scored 24, 24, 23, 25, and 21 points a game in the last 5 years, and he's 26 years old. Like, I get that Brandon Ingram has a little bit of a funkiness to him, that there's something about him that makes you wonder whether he makes anyone else on the floor better. His effective field goal percentage has been 52 and 53%. He's, in theory, doesn't shoot enough threes. I'm a little lost, though, on why, in a league where talent's hard to come by, why Brandon Ingram's market is this soft. So, I mean, the answer is that somehow, rightfully so, a little bit, that Brandon Ingram has kind of become this player that no one's entirely sure if he really makes anyone else on the floor better. And if there's not just a little hollowness to his stats and some things of that sort. And I think that's probably, there's some legitimacy to that. But Brandon Ingram is like the 32nd or 3rd best player in the NBA. And quite honestly, if you want to know where like the divisional line is in the NBA, like that's it. Like the next set of players after Brandon Ingram, when you start ranking the players in the NBA, are Jalen Williams, like Scotty Barnes, Chet Holmgren, like the next generation, right? The next, if you think Alfred Şengün's in that, like it's the next group of guys. Brandon Ingram is at the bottom end of the bona fide, real studs of the NBA, right? He's in a group of players that's like Pascal Siakam, Karl Anthony Towns. I think Paolo's probably moved into that group. Lauri's probably right there too. Depending what you think of Rudy, he's probably right in there. Like, probably can't win with them by yourself, but boy, they're pretty damn good kind of player, okay? And then the next group is this next generation. And then the next group to me is a really big drop. Like the next group to me is DeMar DeRozan, DeJounte Murray, Mikal Bridges, Darius Garland. And then like you're into the fading stars of Chris Middleton or an Aaron Gordon or an OG Anunoby or a, like I'm not like our Fred VanVleet. Like it's a huge drop to me. So like, I mean, a really big drop. Like there's a group, Franz Wagner's, Paulo, if you count them. Jalen, as I said, Chet Holmgren, as I said, Scotty Barnes. Like there's this group of young players and there's about 8 of them that are right on the edge of this group. And some of them are going to get in and some of them aren't. Like that's how it works. But then the next group of players is like Julius Randle. They're not. So I'm just kind of mystified on why the Brandon Ingram market is this soft. And if it is this soft, it is a question to me of whether or not maybe we get out of the tank game and try to build from the middle. There is an argument that building from the middle is actually more likely to be successful. And then there's Cooper Flagg, and then everyone wants you to just be terrible. I don't know necessarily also what we're doing to get this trade done with them, right? You know, it'd have to be a really, I think they want something for Brandon Ingram at this point, right? Now, if they suddenly, I guess there's a point, if we're going to talk about this, like there's a point where the deal gets so good you can't help yourself. Like Brandon Ingram's $36 million. And if suddenly on the Utah Jazz side of things, your $36 million is Jordan Clarkson and John Collins, which I think is 38 or 40 million, and you're taking one other piece, and we're in without a lot of picks. Then we're in. I think we have to be. So it's a really good question. We have still not heard anything official about Drew Eubanks or Kris Dunn. Is it safe to assume that this is because the team's still working on other transactions? The answer is yes. It has to be. That's like, it's not like those deals are wrong. No one's reported something else. So yes, I think the question is, have the Jazz tried to find something else? And are they working on something else? And then they'll get, as of right now, there's no reason not to do it. Are there free agents left out there who you would spend money on? So let's go back to my original list that I put up the day free agency started, so that at least I'm telling the truth. Here are the free agents that I liked. I liked Jalen Smith, he's signed. I liked Isaiah Hartenstein, he's signed. I liked Mo Wagner, he's signed. I liked Markelle Fultz, he's not signed. I liked Aaron Holiday, I think he's signed, unfortunately. He's tough. I like Isaiah Joe, he's signed. Gary Trent Jr. is not signed. Brandon Boston is not signed. Sadiq Bey just signed, and Isaac Okoro is not signed. So the first player I would like at this point would be Isaac Okoro. I would really like it if we had somebody on the wing that could defend and play hard and play defense. And I don't think Isaac Okoro is great. I just think he'd be very valuable to the way we want to improve as a roster and a franchise. And I would be willing to pay him. And he doesn't seem to have much of a market. So Isaac Okoro would be the first player on my list of players. Tyus Jones is interesting right now. You're probably going to have to give him 25 minutes a night, which might be more than you want to. I don't mind, by the way. Isaac Okoro can just have minutes too. Like, I'm just good with Isaac Okoro at 23 years old, just getting minutes. Tyus Jones would just be getting minutes to settle us and make us play correctly. Or Spencer Dinwiddie at 31, Markelle Fultz. That was my Markelle Fultz theory. He's 26. He's really talented. I don't think he's going to get over his issues. He's not going to ever be great, but I just think he settles you. He plays well. He gets in the paint. He defends at the point of attack. He plays hard. For those things, I like him. So that's why would be on that list for me. And the next question is, should the Jazz get a veteran point guard regardless of what happens with Lauri? So that would be Tyus Jones or Markelle Fultz are the point guards left at this point. Who are really point guards. Spencer Dinwiddie is on that roster as well. I would assume he's at this point 31 years old. He's going to go to a veteran team. But who knows? Of shooting guards, Lonnie Walker the fourth is 25 and floating out there. He's actually had some good games. I'm more of a fan of his than I have been in the past. But I don't know that, that if you're signing him, meaning Bryce Sensabaugh never gets any minutes. You're probably restricting. I don't know what your plans are with Cody Williams. You already have Colin. You already have Jordan. Unless you're moving someone, I can't see us signing another shooting guard. Isaac Okoro is the wing player I would be very interested in signing still. And I don't really have anybody left on kind of the power forward, Taylor Hendricks, John Collins position that's out there. There's a lot of 30-plus-year-old veterans. I wouldn't mind bringing Luka Samanic back and just keep working on that. That would probably be there's a guy Okiki who was at Auburn and tore his ACL, has been in Orlando, hasn't ever panned out. He's 25. He might be worth the Luka Samanic run to see what you see there. Precious Achiuwa is 24 years old, and I do not think he is signed. And he could play a little center for us. He's fine. So there's some pieces, but there's nothing. Isaac Okoro would be the player I would love for us to sign, if possible at this point. I know he can't. He's actually shot fine last year. He's not a great shooter, but that is the player that I would love to see. All right. The questions continue and they get fast now that we've hit those two things. Now we get into the youngsters and how to tank next as we continue on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. The next segment of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online, flexible therapy in a day and age which, thankfully, we are much more welcoming and accepting of therapy. It has become, the downside of that is as we have become more accepting and understanding of therapy, it has become harder and harder to actually get to a therapist. So therefore, this is where BetterHelp becomes really valuable to you, because BetterHelp allows you to do it online. And then I think the thing that might be most valuable to BetterHelp is if for some reason, even after all their systems where they put you through a survey and they try to figure it out and they get you to the best person, you don't like your therapist, you can switch. And if you try to do that in real life, it's almost impossible. So what do we have here for you? BetterHelp is flexible, online, convenient therapy. Therapy, to me, is performance enhancing in your brain. Why are you having the same thoughts? What trauma has caused you to do this? What coping mechanisms can you add? How can you set boundaries? How can you get better in the brain? We go to the weight room to lift. I ride my bike for cardio. I do all these other things. Why don't we do this as well? So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out that brief questionnaire I mentioned, and you'll get set up with a licensed therapist. Stop comparing. Start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Let's get right to it. By the way, check out the Big 6 in 60. All right. How would you rank the most likely to make an All-Star game in 3 years out of Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, Cody Williams, and Isaiah Collier? So I would say 0 chance. I would almost be willing to do something stupid like shave my head if one of these is an All-Star in 3 years. First of all, being an All-Star is super impossible. There's so many good players in the league. You have to be a top 25, top 30 player in the NBA. I don't see any of these guys being a top 30 player in the NBA in 3 years. I just think it's too hard. It's not a criticism of them. If I had to choose one, I would take Keontae George by a long margin because he's the one who has the skill set. If it starts to come together, could explode. If he can really start making his shots, he's big enough, strong enough, quick enough, understands how to play, will have the ball in his hands, will be able to score. Taylor and Cody don't have a skill set where they can dominate a game like that. Collier, it's too early to see. So that would be my quick answer. Would it be possible for us to see a starting lineup of Keontae and Collier this season and Key's long-term position be the 2 guard? I think there's still a great question of whether, to the next question, which is Keontae is playing a lot of point guard this summer. Is he a long-term plan of point guard? I think there's still a great question whether Keontae's a point guard. But he can definitely play with the ball in his hands. He can definitely play a pick and roll. So I don't really sometimes entirely. I do think you need to have a point guard. You need to have structure. I do think Keontae needs to be careful about the turnovers. But I'm not entirely sure what a point guard per se is. If we're playing 5 out and opening it up and driving and kicking and then just playing and spinning it and moving it, he can play pick and roll and he can play handoff, which so can everyone. So is it good to have another ball handler on the floor with him? Yes. Could Collier and Keontae play together? Sure. We wouldn't win a lot that way. You don't win with first and second year players. So that would not be a lineup that would be designed to win. That would be a line designed to develop. Seems like Cody Williams' personality is a little bit like Alec Burks. Tons of talent, but laid back personality may prevent him from being great. Well, too early to tell. And I have to say, I think I have said this all week long, and I want to make sure I'm really clear about this. Cody Williams is so relaxed and so calm and so chill. And it's for me personally, I found it uncomfortable, disconcerting, but so is Tim Duncan, right? There's just Keontae's a little like this. Their bodies are so good. They move so beautifully. And every time Cody Williams had to move his feet defensively to get there, he got there. One time he went to the rim a little softer than he wanted to. That's just learning. So I don't think I would overplay this. I don't mean to be overplaying. The other one, I guess we have to define what great is. But Alec Burks is about to enter his 14th year in the NBA. That's pretty great. If you mean top all-star level, sure. But I'm not sure that Alec Burks' personality prevented him from anything. Right? I think Alec Burks is about to spend 14 years in the NBA. He did start at 19 or 20. He's only 33 years old. He's going to have there's nothing about the way Alex played the last 2 years that leads me to believe that he's going to actually slow down. I take that back. Last year, his shooting percentage dropped down to 40%. But we might be coming to the end finally. But Alec is about to have a 14-year minimum, because he'll play this year, NBA career. That's pretty great. Cody Williams has a 14-year NBA career and you draft him 10th. That's a win. So I understand what you mean when you're saying great but on the other end, Alec's going to make close to $100 million. So that's never making more than 11. It's a pretty great career. With Collins and Kessler both on the roster, what are the chances Collins comes off the bench? I actually think this is probably the best question of what's going on. Last year, the decision was made after Walker came back from his injury that John Collins started. And the Jazz, in turn, became like the worst defensive team. We're not a great defensive team with Walker either, but became a really bad defensive team. And then John's plus minus was really bad for a while and it got better as the year went on. So the question I have on this, and by the time the year ended, by the way, it's worth giving John credit. By the time the year ended, it wasn't as bad. Our defense was 5 points worse when he was on the floor than off the floor, which it's not great. It's in the 16th percentile, and our effective field goal percentage was 8th worst. So it was not great. And Walker has the biggest impact on our defense of any player who played. Like, he's 4 points better. So if we're really trying to be better defensively, we got to start Walker. Like, to me, that's like really basic. But it gets into some of the dynamics of the NBA that are funky. Can you have your highest paid player come off the bench? And, that seems really simple to you and I. But in the NBA, like, John Collins is making $27 million, and our next closest guy's making 18, and maybe Lauri will be making more by then. But can you really have your highest paid player come off the bench? Do you think the Jazz can still tank for a top 5 draft pick with Lauri and Sexton on the team? I do. I do. I am not in the camp right now that if we roll out a roster that's starting lineup of Keontae, Collin, Lauri, Taylor, Walker, with a bench of, Collins, Clarkson's a pretty veteran bench. We'd actually be pretty deep at that point. Sensabaugh, Eubanks, Cody Williams. We have one too many players there. And if Collier's trying to play. And so if we're doing that, I still feel as though I have 11 players playing. That's too many. So Sensabaugh or Collier's probably out of the rotation. I still think we'd lose a lot of games. I still think that roster, starting as good as Collin and Lauri are, you're starting 2 second-year players and a third-year center with 1, maybe 2 youngsters coming off the bench. That's a lot. I think wins would be hard to come by. 7 teams are built to lose now. Utah, San Antonio, Atlanta. In between those 2 groups are the Jazz. Better than any of the win now teams if we keep Lauri. Are we worse than if we lose now? I really think, I could be dead wrong, but like when the FanDuel odds come out and have win total for the NBA, I suspect that Washington, Brooklyn will be at the bottom. Utah and Portland will be right there as currently constructed. I could be wrong. And then Detroit, we can kind of look at it, but Washington, Brooklyn, Portland, Utah, and then I think Charlotte's right in there, and then Toronto would be a notch ahead. And that's this. Detroit, with some of their signings, would maybe be a notch ahead, but right there. Like, I mean, if you look at our odds for a championship, we're down there at the bottom. Now, maybe that's because they think we're going to make a trade. 2 years ago, the Jazz traded Mitchell and Gobert. They prioritized picks and flexibility because they were lacking that. If they trade Lauri, what would be they looking for? Well, I don't have any idea because I don't know what the Lauri trade would be, but you'd have your pieces and you'd really be focusing on development at that point. Are you aware if there's any plans for non-parts of Jazz Plus to be made available to a large number of fans outside the range? Jazz Plus is available, and I get the games via Leah Pass, but Philip wrote, but not getting the Jazz Plus content. I think they're putting a lot of it up on YouTube would be my one note for you. I was corrected by a fan. Collier isn't small. I said he was small. My comment was that in person, he was smaller than I expected. He's 6'2.5" without shoes. Guards that are smaller without shoes. Westbrook, Gordon, Bledsoe, Kyrie Irving, Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum, Marcus Smart, De'Aaron Fox, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, and Colin Sexton. Same size guards, or within half an inch, Cason Wallace, who we thought was small last year, Lou Dort, Chris Dunn, Grayson Allen, Norman Powell, Gary Harris, Elfrid Payton, Dion Waiters, and Jordan Crawford. Okay, I appreciate the research. Not sure this disproves my point. De'Aaron Fox is the one I can't believe this to be true. De'Aaron Fox seems like he's a long 6'3" to me, but that's interesting. And it also would have to do with reach and some things like that. I'm telling you, I thought Isaiah Collier was really, really good. I was surprised, as I said, that he looked smaller than I anticipated. De'Aaron Fox draft combine. Am I going to really get this from 2017? Oh, I have to go find it though. So no, I'm not. Well, it's alphabetical. I'm not doubting you. I don't know why I'm doing this. De'Aaron Fox, 6'2", standing reach 8'4". That seems really high. Is it? Wingspan on De'Aaron Fox, 6'6.5". So he's a plus 4.5 wingspan. I mean, I think you kind of have to know some of those kind of things on this. Isaiah Collier. Oh, they have this at the 24-25 draft. That would make sense. Isaiah Collier, 6'2.5", standing reach 8'1", wingspan 6'4", and so he's a plus 2 wingspan. I'm not saying you're wrong on the other ones. Like, I think it's all good. I think it's great that you did the research. So I super appreciate that, actually. I just was really interested in De'Aaron Fox. I was really surprised to see that. Thank you very much. Another great edition of Locked On Jazz. Ask LOJ. We'll be back with you next week. I'm going to go to Vegas, so I'll be coming to you Monday from here, Tuesday, Wednesday from Vegas. I'm going to go see us play. I'm kind of into it right now. It is Locked On Jazz. Have a great day. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you the first ever 24/7 national sports channel, Locked On Sports Today. And for those of you on audio, check out the Big 6 in 60 at Locked On Sports Today.